The relentless drumming of the rain was a frantic heartbeat against the grimy alley walls, a symphony for the end of the world. My world, at least. Every gasp for air was a ragged tear in my throat, my lungs burning with the icy October air. Behind me, the heavy, measured footsteps were a death knell, echoing my own frantic pulse. They were closer now. I'd made a mistake, taken a wrong turn into a dead end. A brick wall slick with rain and despair, standing as the final witness to my failure. There was nowhere left to run. A shadow detached itself from the mouth of the alley, solidifying into the silhouette of a man I knew all too well. Marco. His smile was a predatory slash in the dim light, the glint of something metallic in his hand, not a trick of the rain. "Nowhere to hide, Elara," he rasped, his voice a gravelly promise of pain. "He wants you back, and he always gets what he wants." My back hit the cold, unforgiving brick. This was it. After months of looking over my shoulder, of sleeping in cars and living on scraps, the darkness had finally caught up. I squeezed my eyes shut, a silent prayer catching in my throat. Just as his shadow fell over me, a deeper, more commanding voice sliced through the downpour. "That's far enough!" My eyes snapped open. Another figure stood at the alley's entrance, blocking the only escape. But this one was different. Tall, broad, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than I'd made in my entire life. He stood with an unnerving stillness, a predator of a higher order. The streetlights cast a halo around him, but his face was cloaked in shadow. Marco faltered, his confidence wavering. "This ain't your business. Walk away." A low, humorless chuckle echoed off the wet brick. "Anything concerning her?" the stranger said, his voice a low timbre that vibrated through me, a half-forgotten melody from a dream. "Is my business." He stepped forward, and the light finally caught his features. The chiseled jaw, the storm-gray eyes, the dark hair plastered to his forehead by the rain. A ghost. A memory I had buried under years of pain and regret. My breath hitched. It couldn't be. "Damien?" The name was a whisper, a ghost on my lips. His eyes, cold and hard as granite, flickered to me for a barest second. A flicker of something unreadable, shock, pain, recognition, crossed his face before it was gone, replaced by an impenetrable mask of ice. He didn't acknowledge my whisper. His focus was entirely on the man who held my life in his hands. "You have 3 seconds to drop the knife and disappear," Damien stated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. 1. Marco hesitated, his grip tightening. He was a cornered rat, dangerous and unpredictable. "You don't know who you're messing with." 2. Damien took another step, his movements fluid, impossibly fast. He radiated a lethal calm that was far more terrifying than Marco's overt aggression. That was all it took. With a curse, Marco shoved me forward, using me as a momentary shield as he scrambled away, vanishing into the labyrinth of the city. I stumbled, my worn-out boots slipping on the slick pavement, and fell hard against the cobblestones. Pain shot up my arm, but it was nothing compared to the roaring in my ears, the dizzying shock of the man now standing over me. Damien Blackwood. My first love. The boy I had shared whispered secrets with under starry summer skies. The man who had vanished from my life without a word, leaving a wound that had never truly healed. And now he was here, looking down at me not with the warmth of a shared past, but with the cold, assessing gaze of a stranger. He crouched down, his expensive suit jacket soaking up the filthy rainwater. He didn't offer a hand. He simply watched me, his gray eyes sweeping over my torn clothes, my gaunt face, the desperation clinging to me like a shroud. "You look like hell, Elara," he said, his voice devoid of sympathy. It was a simple, brutal statement of fact. "What are you doing here?" I managed, pushing myself up, my body trembling from cold and adrenaline. "A better question is, what are you doing in a dark alley about to get yourself killed?" he countered, his jaw tight. He rose to his full height, a towering, intimidating figure who was a universe away from the boy I remembered. The boy was gone. In his place was a man forged from steel and secrets. "It's complicated," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. How could I explain the last 5 years? How could I tell him about the monster I was running from, a man who made Marco look like a saint? "Everything with you always was," he replied, the words clipped. A sleek black car, the kind that whispers of obscene wealth, pulled up silently to the curb beside us. The door opened, pushed from the inside by a driver I couldn't see. "Get in." It wasn't a request, it was a command, the kind he was now obviously used to giving. Part of me, the part that had been running for so long, screamed to refuse, to flee again. But where would I go? The rain was seeping into my bones, and the brief, violent encounter had drained the last of my strength. And then there was the look in his eyes, a dangerous, possessive glint that promised he wouldn't let me go. Not this time. Defeated, I limped toward the car, the warmth of the leather interior a shocking contrast to the bitter cold outside. Damien slid in beside me, the space suddenly feeling impossibly small. He gave a quiet order to the driver, and the car pulled away from the curb, leaving the dark, wet alley behind. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy with unspoken questions and the ghosts of 1,000 shared memories. I stared out the window, watching the rain-streaked city lights blur into a news river of color. I could feel his eyes on me, intense and probing. "I'm not going to ask again, Elara," he finally said, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver down my spine. "Who are you running from?" I wrapped my arms around myself, a futile attempt to hold the broken pieces of my life together. "You don't want to know. You can't get involved in this, Damien. It's dangerous." "You seem to forget who you're talking to," he said, a hint of arrogance coloring his tone. "I'm not the boy you left behind. I own this city. There is no danger here that I can't handle." He said it with such absolute certainty, such unshakable power, that for a fleeting moment I almost believed him. But he didn't know. He couldn't possibly understand the kind of darkness I was entangled in. "It's not that simple," I whispered, my voice breaking. "He'll kill you. He'll kill anyone who helps me." A muscle in his jaw clenched. Let him try. He reached out, his fingers brushing against my chin, forcing me to look at him. His touch was electric, a jolt of warmth that was both terrifying and achingly familiar. His gray eyes bored into mine, stripping away all my defenses. "You're mine now, Elara, and I protect what's mine. I'll never let you go again." The words were a vow, a possessive claim that staked a flag in the ruins of my heart. It was terrifying, it was reckless, and it was the first time in 5 years that I felt a flicker of something other than fear. A treacherous, desperate spark of hope. His words hung in the charged air of the car, a chain binding me to him before I'd even had a chance to understand. I flinched away from his touch, the warmth of his fingers leaving a phantom trace on my cold skin. "You can't do this," I whispered, turning my face back to the rain-lashed window. "You can't just reappear after 5 years and claim me. You don't know anything about me anymore." "I know you're in trouble," he countered, his voice a low, unyielding rumble. "I know you're terrified, and I know I'm the only one who can fix this. That's all that matters right now." The sheer arrogance of it should have angered me, but I was too weary to fight. His certainty was a strange and terrifying comfort, a solid rock in the swirling vortex of my fear. We drove in silence, the car gliding through the glistening streets with an eerie quiet. We left the grimy, desperate part of the city behind, ascending into a world of gleaming towers and pristine glass. A world that was now his. The car pulled into a private underground garage, and we were whisked up in a silent elevator that opened directly into a sprawling penthouse apartment. The space was breathtaking and cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the storm-ravaged city below, a god's-eye view that made everything seem small and insignificant. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, and impersonal. It was less a home and more a fortress in the sky. A beautiful cage. Damien walked over to a wet bar carved from a single piece of black marble and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a heavy crystal glass. He didn't offer me. He just watched me as I stood dripping on his polished concrete floor, a piece of street refuse that had washed up in his coffee. There's a shower in the guest room. First door on the left, he said, his tone flat, businesslike. You'll find clothes in the closet. My housekeeper keeps it stocked. I hesitated, feeling the deep, ingrained instinct to bolt, to run from this man and his cold, orderly world that threatened to swallow me whole. But the thought of a hot shower, of clean clothes, of just one night where I didn't have to sleep with one eye open was an irresistible siren's call. Nodding numbly, I walked down the hall. The guest room was larger than any apartment I'd ever lived in. The bathroom was a sanctuary of steam and marble. As the hot water sluiced over me, washing away the grime and the cold, I tried to wash away the memories too. The memory of Marco's cruel smile, the feeling of Damien's fingers on my skin, the ghost of the boy he used to be. But they were indelible stains. I found a simple black cashmere sweater and soft gray pants in the closet, clothes that felt like a caress against my raw skin. They fit perfectly, a detail that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. When I emerged, my wet hair wrapped in a plush towel, Damien was standing exactly where I'd left him, staring out at the lightning that forked across the sky. He had shed his wet jacket, and the white shirt he wore was stretched taut across his broad shoulders. He looked powerful, remote, a king surveying his domain. He turned as I entered, his gray eyes raking over me. They lingered for a moment, and I saw that flicker again, a deep, primal emotion he quickly suppressed. "Better," was all he said. "Where am I, Damien?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "My home, the safest place in this city," he replied, taking a sip of his drink. "No one will find you here." "You can't keep me here," I said, the words lacking conviction even to my own ears. "I can and I will," he stated, setting his glass down with a decisive click. "Until you tell me who I need to eliminate." The coldness of the word eliminate sent a fresh chill through me. This wasn't a game. This wasn't the Damien who had carved our initials into the old oak tree by Miller's Creek. This was a man who spoke of death as if it were a business transaction. "I told you you don't want to get involved." "Stop protecting him," he bit out, his patience finally snapping. He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides, his presence overwhelming in the stark room. He stopped just short of touching me, but I could feel the heat rolling off him, smell the faint, clean scent of rain and expensive whiskey. "He sent a man with a knife after you, Elara. He forfeited any right to your protection. His name." My heart hammered against my ribs. To say the name was to make it real, to bring the full weight of that darkness into this pristine, sterile sanctuary. It was to tie Damien to my fate, a fate I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. "He'll destroy you," I pleaded, looking up into his unyielding face. "You underestimate me," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerously soft tone. He reached up, his thumb gently brushing a stray drop of water from my temple. The simple, tender gesture was so at odds with his harsh words that it made my breath catch. "I've been searching for you for 5 years, Elara. I didn't spend that time idly. I built this," he gestured to the city outside the window, "so that when I found you, nothing and no one could ever take you from me again. Now, tell me his name." The fight went out of me, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and the crushing weight of my secrets. Maybe he was right. Maybe I couldn't do this alone anymore. My lips trembled as I formed the name, a poison I'd held on my tongue for too long. Alistair, I whispered. His name is Alistair Thorne. I watched his face, expecting to see shock, maybe even a flicker of fear. Instead, a chilling stillness settled over his features. His jaw tightened, and his eyes, already the color of a storm, darkened into something truly tempestuous. He knew the name. Of course, he knew the name. In the world of power and wealth he now inhabited, Alistair Thorne was not an unknown entity. Damien took a step back. The brief moment of connection shattered. He looked at me now, as if seeing a different person, a puzzle piece that had just clicked into a place he didn't like. A cold, bitter understanding dawned in his eyes. Alistair Thorne, he repeated, the name tasting like acid in his mouth. He let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh, but it held no humor. It was the sound of pure, cynical disillusionment. So, that's the villain you made a deal with. The accusation in his voice was a heavy impact, colder and sharper than any blade. A deal? I repeated, the word tasting bitter. You think I had a choice? There's always a choice, Elara. He turned away from me, walking toward the immense window, his reflection a dark, imposing silhouette against the glittering cityscape. You could have come to me. A raw, hysterical laugh bubbled up from my chest. To you? You were gone, Damien. You vanished. One day you were whispering promises of forever in my ear. The next you were just gone. No note, no call, no explanation. Just an empty space where my entire future was supposed to be. He flinched, his shoulders tightening. It was the first gap I'd seen in his armor of cold indifference. I had my reasons. And I had mine, I shot back, my voice gaining strength from the righteous fury of old wounds torn open. You have no right to stand there in your castle in the sky and judge the choices I made to survive in the desperate situation you left me in. He turned slowly, his face a mask of controlled fury, but his eyes were a maelstrom of pain. Was his money worth it? Did his power keep you warm at night? The question was so cruel, so far from the truth, that it knocked the air from my lungs. I sank onto the edge of a minimalist sofa that felt as unforgiving as a block of ice. The fight drained out of me, leaving only the hollow ache of memory. He saved my father's life, I said, my voice flat and lifeless. That's the deal I made. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Damien didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched me, the condemnation in his eyes slowly, almost imperceptibly, being replaced by confusion. You left in the spring, I began, my gaze unfocused as I was pulled back into the undertow of the past. Everything was perfect. We were saving up for that little farmhouse just outside of town, the one with the porch swing and the big oak tree. We were going to get married. We were going to be happy. The memory was so vivid, it was like breathing again after being underwater for too long. The sun was warm on my skin, the air thick with the scent of freshly cut grass. Damien's hand was in mine, calloused and strong. His laughter was easy, his gray eyes soft with a love that felt as real and solid as the earth beneath our feet. He wasn't a king then. He was just a boy with a fierce heart who worked 2 jobs to build a future for us. His dreams as simple and as beautiful as mine. And then you were gone, I continued, my voice trembling as I surfaced back into the cold reality of the penthouse. A week later, my father collapsed at the factory, an aneurysm. The doctors said he needed an experimental surgery, one that wasn't covered by insurance. The bills, Damien, they were astronomical. We were going to lose the house, everything. I remembered the stark white of the hospital walls, the constant soul-crushing beep of the machines keeping my father alive. I remembered the pitying looks from the administrators as they handed me bills with more zeros than I could comprehend. Desperation was a physical thing, a clawing beast in my chest, suffocating me day and night. I was working 3 jobs, barely sleeping. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. And then he showed up. I didn't have to say Alistair's name. It felt like a curse in this room. He came to the hospital. He was charming, sympathetic. He said he'd heard about my father's situation and wanted to help. A charitable donation, he called it. Alistair had been the perfect gentleman. His suits were immaculate, his smile kind, his words a soothing balm on my raw nerves. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply offered a lifeline to a drowning girl. He paid for everything. The surgery, the recovery, the aftercare. He saved my father, and I was so blinded by gratitude, I didn't see the bars of the cage he was building around me. When my father was finally home and safe, Alistair presented me with a contract, I said, my voice dropping to a near inaudible whisper. It wasn't for repayment. He said my debt could not be paid in money. He wanted me, my companionship, my presence at his side. He owned my father's life, and by extension, he owned mine. If I ever tried to leave, he would not only reclaim his investment, he would ruin us completely. He would ensure my father never received proper medical care again. He would destroy everything. I finally looked up and met Damien's gaze. The anger was gone. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. The cold, powerful billionaire had vanished, and for a fleeting second, I saw the boy I once loved, his face stricken with a pain that mirrored my own. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt before me, his movements stiff, unnatural. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before his fingers gently cupped my jaw. His touch was no longer possessive, but infinitely tender. "Elara," he breathed, his voice raw with a guilt that cut deeper than his anger ever could. I didn't know. "How could you?" I whispered, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a hot path down my cold cheek. His thumb moved to brush it away, the gesture achingly gentle. "I left to protect you," he said, his voice thick with unshed emotion. "My father, he had debts to dangerous people. They threatened you. They threatened our future. I thought if I disappeared, if I cut all ties and built my own power, I could come back and keep you safe from them forever. I never imagined I was leaving you to face a different kind of monster alone." The confession hung between us, a revelation that recontextualized everything. He hadn't abandoned me. He had sacrificed his own happiness, our happiness, in a desperate, misguided attempt to save me. We were 2 halves of the same tragedy, broken by secrets we kept to protect each other. "I've been searching for you for 5 years, he repeated, but this time the words held a different meaning. They weren't a statement of obsession, but a testament to a love that had refused to die. Every deal I made, every risk I took, it was all to get back to you, to be strong enough to deserve you." He leaned his forehead against mine, his eyes closing. The silence was no longer a chasm between us, but a shared space of grief and understanding. The storm outside raged on, but in that moment, in the center of his cold, empty fortress, a fragile peace began to settle. "He will not have you," Damien vowed, his voice a low, deadly promise against my skin. "This contract, this debt, it's over. I'll pay it. I will buy your freedom, Elara, even if it costs me everything I've built." The idea of freedom was a foreign concept, a word I hadn't dared to let myself think for years. To hear it from Damien's lips, spoken with such fierce conviction, was like the sun breaking through a perpetual storm. But with the light came the shadows, the price, the— "No," I said, pulling back from the warmth of his touch, the comfort of his presence. The reality of our situation crashed down on me. "Damien, you don't understand. Alistair isn't just a businessman you can buy out. He's vindictive. He doesn't want money. He wants control. He'll see this as a challenge. He will tear down your entire world just to prove he can." "Let him," Damien said, his voice a low growl of absolute confidence. He stood up, a warrior ready for battle, his eyes glinting with a dangerous light. He has no idea what I'm capable of. I didn't claw my way up from nothing just to be intimidated by old money and a fancy suit. This ends now. Before I could argue further, a sharp, intrusive buzz echoed through the silent penthouse. A digital chime from an intercom panel near the door. Damien's head snapped toward the sound, his entire body tensing. A deep frown creased his brow. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice sharp, directed at the air. "Security, Mr. Blackwood," a tinny voice replied. "Apologies for the disturbance, sir. Mr. Alistair Thorne is in the lobby. He insists on seeing you. He says you have something of his." Ice flooded my veins. It was impossible. How could he have found me so fast? This building was a fortress. The address was unlisted. It was a testament to Alistair's terrifying reach, a message that there was no place on earth I could hide from him. I felt the blood drain from my face, the fragile hope of the last few minutes shattering into a million pieces. Damien's eyes found mine, and in them I saw not fear, but a cold, gathering rage. He saw the terror on my face, and it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. "Tell Mr. Thorne," Damien said, his voice lethally calm, "that he is not welcome." "We did, sir," the security guard replied, his voice strained. "He's persuasive. He has a court order, sir, for the immediate return of Elara Vance." A court order? Of course. Alistair wouldn't use thugs and knives when he could wield the law itself as a weapon. He had me bound in contracts and legal chains, turning my prison into something sanctioned and official. "He's not taking you," Damien bit out, his gaze locked on mine, a silent vow passing between us. He walked to the intercom. "Send him up." "Damien, no!" I cried, scrambling to my feet. "You can't let him in here. That's what he wants. To confront you, to show you he can get to you anytime he wants." "Then we'll let him have his show," Damien said, turning to face me. He placed his hands on my shoulders, his grip firm and steadying. "And we'll show him that he has lost. Stay behind me. Do not speak unless I ask you to. I will handle this." The elevator chimed, a sound that signaled the arrival of my own personal devil. The doors slid open, and there he was. Alistair Thorne was the picture of refined elegance and quiet menace. He was older than Damien, perhaps in his late 40s, with silvering temples and eyes the color of faded parchment that missed nothing. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, and his smile was a thin, bloodless line of polite cruelty. He held a single file in his hand. His eyes immediately found me, standing behind Damien's protective form. They swept over me, taking in the clean clothes, the flush in my cheeks. His smile tightened. "Elara, my dear," he said, his voice smooth as silk and just as suffocating. "You've caused quite a commotion. I was worried. It's unlike you to run off without so much as a word. That is a breach of our agreement." "She's not going anywhere with you, Thorne," Damien stated, his body a solid wall between us. Alistair's gaze slid to Damien, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Damien Blackwood, the prodigy of the financial district. I've heard a great deal about you. You've made quite a name for yourself, but you are new to this world. And in this world, there are rules. Contracts are honored, property is returned." He tapped the file against his hand. "And Elara, for all her spirit, is my property." The word hit me like a physical slap. In that moment, something inside me broke. It was not submission, but rebellion. Years of swallowed fear and forced obedience erupted into a single defiant spark. "I am not your property," I said, my voice trembling but clear. I stepped out from behind Damien, meeting Alistair's cold gaze head-on. "I am a human being, and I will not spend another day of my life as your possession." Alistair's eyes narrowed, the polite facade cracking for a fraction of a second to reveal the snake beneath. You forget the debt you owe, my dear? You forget what happens to your father if that debt is not honored? Name your price, Damien cut in, his voice like chipping ice. Whatever she owes, whatever you spent, I will double it, triple it. Write any number you want on a check, and it's yours. But you will release her from this contract, and you will never come near her again. Alistair let out a soft, condescending laugh. You see, Blackwood, that is where you show your naivete. You think everything has a price tag. Some things are invaluable. The pleasure of a beautiful woman's company, the satisfaction of a debt well paid, the loyalty born of gratitude. These things cannot be bought. His eyes bored into me. They can only be owned. Get out, Damien snarled, taking a threatening step forward. I will leave, Alistair said, unperturbed. For now. But know this. He looked from Damien to me, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was more menacing than any shout. I am not a man who loses his investments. You can surround her with your bodyguards and hide her in your tower, Blackwood, but I will find a way. Perhaps the hospital where her father receives his care is not as secure as it should be. Accidents happen. Medications get mixed up. It would be a tragedy for his health to relapse. The threat was clear, precise, and utterly devastating. He wouldn't come after me. He wouldn't come after Damien. He would go after the one person I couldn't protect, the very reason I had entered this hell in the first place. My legs gave out, and I would have collapsed if Damien hadn't reached back, his arms circling my waist, pulling me tight against his side. You will stay away from him, I whispered, the words filled with a desperate, impotent rage. Then come back with me, Alistair offered, his smile returning, predatory and triumphant. Fulfill your contract. It's very simple. The choice is not yours to give, Damien said, his voice dangerously low. It's hers, and she has made it. He pulled me closer, his hand splayed protectively over my back. Now get out of my home before I forget you're a guest. Alistair held Damien's gaze for a long, silent moment, a battle of wills playing out in the space between them. Finally, with a slight, almost imperceptible nod, he turned. As you wish, he said lightly. He placed the file on a nearby table. My lawyers will be in touch. Enjoy your fleeting victory. With that, he walked back to the elevator and was gone. The moment the doors closed, a shudder racked my body. The adrenaline, the fear, the rage, it all came crashing down at once. I started to tremble uncontrollably. Damien turned me in his arms, his hands framing my face, his gray eyes blazing with a protective fire. Hey, look at me, he commanded softly. He's gone. He can't hurt you here. But my father, I sobbed, the words catching in my throat. He'll hurt my father, Damien. I know he will. No, he won't, he said, his voice an iron promise. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly against his chest, his hands stroking my hair. I could feel the frantic, steady beat of his heart against my ear. I've already dispatched my personal security team to the hospital. They have my father surrounded. I moved him to a private wing an hour ago. Alistair will never get near him. I'll protect you, Elara. I'll protect both of you. I swear it, even if it costs me everything. His promise was an anchor in the storm of my terror. I clung to him, burying my face in the solid warmth of his chest, and for the first time in 5 years, I let myself break. The sobs were ragged, ugly things, torn from a place of deep, silent pain. He didn't speak. He just held me, his hand a steady, comforting weight on the back of my head, letting me pour out all the fear and exhaustion I had held inside for so long. He absorbed my despair without judgment, offering his strength as a shield until the storm inside me finally began to subside. When the tears finally stopped, I was left feeling hollowed out, but strangely calm. I leaned back, my hands still resting on his chest, and looked up at him. The cold, ruthless billionaire was gone. replaced by the man I had loved, his gray eyes filled with a fierce tenderness and a deep, soul-wrenching regret. "He's right, you know," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You've built all of this, an empire. He could take it all away from you. He'll use my father, my contract. He will find a way to ruin you just to punish me for leaving." Damien's hand came up to cup my cheek, his thumb stroking my skin. "Let him try," he said, his voice a low, resolute murmur. "This," he glanced around the vast, empty penthouse, "is just steel and glass. It's a fortress I built to impress a world I don't care about. It means nothing. It meant nothing until you were in it. Without you, Elara, it's the loneliest place on earth. I would burn it to the ground myself if it meant keeping you safe." His words were a confession, a stripping away of the armor he had worn for 5 long years. He was showing me the wounded heart he had hidden beneath layers of power and wealth. A new strength began to solidify within me, forged in the fire of his devotion. I was no longer just a victim to be protected. I was a survivor, and I had knowledge that all his power and money couldn't buy. "We can't just protect my father," I said, my voice gaining a new resolve. "We can't just hide. That's what I've been doing for years, and it doesn't work. He'll always find a way. We have to stop him, for good." Damien studied my face, a flicker of surprise and admiration in his eyes. "Tell me how." "There's something," I began, my mind racing, sifting through years of forced smiles and silent observations. In his private study at the estate, he keeps a ledger. It's bound in red leather. He never lets it out of his sight. I once saw it open by accident. It wasn't business accounts. It was names, dates, amounts. It looked like blackmail. He called it his insurance policy. He uses it to control politicians, judges, everyone. It's the source of his real power. It's what makes him untouchable." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Damien's face. The strategist, the predator, was back, but this time he was on my side. "And where does he keep this book?" "In a hidden safe behind a painting of his great-grandfather. The combination is his birth date. He's arrogant enough to think no one would ever dare." Damien looked at me, a new light in his eyes. He wasn't just seeing the woman he had to save. He was seeing his partner, his equal. "Then we're not going to hide from him," he said, his voice humming with controlled power. "We're not going to buy him off. We're going to dismantle him, piece by piece, you and me, together." The word "together" was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was a promise that healed the fractured pieces of my soul. We stood there in the quiet of the penthouse, the storm outside having finally broken, leaving the city washed clean and glittering below. The fear that had been my constant companion for years was finally receding, replaced by a fierce, burning hope. Damien's gaze softened, the intensity of battle planning giving way to a deeper, more profound emotion. He slowly lowered his head, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. I met him halfway, rising on my toes as his lips finally met mine. The kiss was not the desperate, frantic collision I might have expected. It was a slow, deliberate claiming, a rediscovery of something precious that had been lost. It was 5 years of unspoken longing, of searching and surviving, of aching loneliness poured into a single, breathtaking moment. It was the boy with the easy laugh and the man with the wounded eyes, all of it coming together in a promise that tasted of redemption. He pulled back, his forehead resting against mine, his thumbs gently tracing the line of my jaw. "I never stopped loving you, Elara," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "Not for a single day. Every brutal decision, every sleepless night, it was all to find my way back to you." "You never lost me," I whispered, my hand coming up to rest over his heart, feeling its strong, steady rhythm. Even in the darkest moments, I held on to the memory of you. It was the only thing that kept me from breaking completely. He captured my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm before lacing his fingers through mine, holding on tight. Alistair Thorne took 5 years from us, he said, his voice a low, deadly vow. He will not take another minute. He led me to the window, and we stood side by side, our joined hands a testament to our renewed bond. We looked out at the city, his kingdom, our battlefield. It was no longer terrifying. It was just a place, a backdrop for the war we were about to wage. The outcome was no longer in doubt, not because he was powerful or because I had a secret, but because we were finally facing the darkness together. And this time, we would not be broken. This child, he started, his voice suddenly hesitant, his eyes searching mine with a terrifying vulnerability. I saw the file he left on the table, a medical report. Elara, is there? My heart stopped. I followed his gaze to the file Alistair had left, its manila cover a stark and brutal accusation on the marble table. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, a secret I had guarded more fiercely than my own life. A secret Alistair had just discovered and intended to use as his final, cruelest weapon. I met Damien's searching, hopeful, terrified gaze, and I couldn't lie. Not anymore. Yes, I whispered, the word both a confession and a prayer. For 3 months, I was going to run, to disappear for good before he could find out, to protect them. He stared at me, his face a canvas of shock, disbelief, and a dawning, overwhelming joy that shattered the last of his defenses. His eyes impossibly filled with tears. He dropped to his knees before me, his hands gently, reverently, coming to rest on my stomach. Ours? He choked out, his voice breaking completely. I nodded, a tear of my own tracing a path down my cheek. Yours, I confirmed, my voice full of a love that had weathered the storm and come out stronger. It was always yours. He pressed his forehead against me, a broken, beautiful sound escaping him. It wasn't the sound of a king or a billionaire. It was the sound of a man who had just been given back his entire world. Let him come, he whispered, his voice a ragged promise against me. Let them all come. I'll protect you. I'll protect both of you, even if it costs me my soul.